Negotiations stalled, but a major problem was resolved almost unnoticed, and everyone agrees it must go on. But how? The most important questions and answers on the state of the UK's exit from the EU are still open. And the balance that the five powerful took in their video slot when they were talking was sobering. Neither side sees any progress in negotiations on how to proceed with the EU and the UK. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Councillor Charles Michel, Parliament President David Sassoli, EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson literally stated, the will to reach an agreement is there. One wants to intensify the efforts. Johnson also said the prospect of an agreement was very good. This could well come about in July. You only need a little more oomph, a little boom, new impetus. The Prime Minister was more confident than everyone else. After all, the most at stake for him. What is the current status of the negotiations? At the moment, both sides are still in a comfortable transition phase. Great Britain left the EU with a Brexit on January 31st, but will remain a member of the EU internal market and customs union until December 31st. This time serves to develop an agreement. However, the negotiations are not proceeding. The parties blame each other. Barnier accused the British government of deviating from existing agreements and not moving about in disputes. Frost in turn criticized the EU for offering London an inferior trade agreement that would give it unprecedented control over Britain. A big problem, however, seems to be off the table, even if this happened rather unnoticed. It was long unclear what to do with the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. With Brexit, the border became the EU's external border and therefore requires personal, goods and, if necessary, customs controls. The EU rejected a hard border between the two countries, out of solidarity with the Irish and for fear of possible conflicts on a hard border on the island. According to the withdrawal agreement, Northern Ireland will remain in the EU customs union, but will also be in the UK customs territory. This requires controls between Northern Ireland on the one side and Great Britain, that means England, Scotland and Wales, on the other side of the Irish Sea. Initially, Johnson had ruled that out because it endangered the unity of the kingdom. In mid-May, however, the British government announced, by the way, that it would be precisely these types of controls in the three Northern Irish ports of Belfast, Warrenpoint and Larne. So a big problem seems to be solved for the EU and especially its member country Ireland. Great Britain has to deal with the new domestic tasks. What is still being negotiated? Brussels offers London access to the EU market without tariffs and quantity limits, so quotas, but demands compliance with European social, environmental and consumer standards. Britain, on the other hand, wants free trade access but does not want to accept the EU requirements. The arguments have remained essentially unchanged since the beginning of the negotiations. While Brussels insists that access to the market is not possible without complying with EU standards, London insists that these restrict development as an independent trading nation. Another point of contention concerns case law. Brussels calls for recognition of the European Court of Justice, so that a decisive body is defined in case of a dispute and legal certainty is guaranteed. The freedoms, fundamental rights and data of our citizens must be safeguarded under all circumstances, said Ursula von der Leyen. It should be in the common interest of the EU and Great Britain to strive for the higher standards and not to revert to worse ones. London rejects the ECJ jurisdiction because it would also stand in the way of the country's independence. This was a central promise of the Brexit campaign. Disagreements regarding certain economic sectors are irrelevant, but have a strong symbolic effect. Johnson had deliberately exploited this in the election campaign, for example with press appointments among fishermen who complained that foreign ships would empty British waters. That is why the question of who should have access to British fishing grounds and how much is always part of the negotiations, even though fishing only contributes about 0.1% to British economic output. The same applies to fishing exports. Great Britain would like to export a large part of the fish caught to the EU afterwards and has a correspondingly weak negotiating position. But what about an extension? In theory, both sides could have agreed on an extension, but the Joint Committee is not meeting anymore in June, and so that's off the table. Johnson never wanted it, the EU always offered it, but it is really off the table now. British media have speculated that a postponement could be granted at a later date as long as it could save failed negotiations. However, these forecasts fall into a wishful thinking category. For a later extension, a new contract would have to be drawn up, which all 27 EU countries and some regional parliaments would have to agree to. According to surveys, most British voters want their government to apply for an extension to the EU, increasing the chances of an agreement. And still Johnson said on the other side that an extension would defraud his voters to whom he had promised Brexit. And it doesn't matter anymore. It really is too late now. And everything else is unrealistic. However, the Brexit has been implemented since January 31st. The only question is whether the exit is a regulated or an unregulated one. But what can happen at worst? If the negotiations remain without agreement on the essential issues, the no deal would become a reality with the end of the transition phase on December 31st. Then trade with Great Britain would fall under the rules of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. The kingdom would then be treated like any other third country, including duties on goods and services traded. This would make bilateral trade significantly less attractive and harm the economy on both sides of the English Channel. According to the British media, Johnson is ready for a no deal if there is still no progress. The reports have not yet been officially confirmed. However, Johnson had openly considered the no deal as an option during the Brexit negotiations. However, the damage would be much greater for Great Britain than for the EU, since the country exports to the EU proportionally more than the other way around. And on the other hand, at the moment there are rumors that Boris is handing over another proposal, that he has a plan how, from his point of view, the negotiations can be saved. But as much as you hear from the EU side at the moment, they are not really convinced. And if you now want to know more about European politics from a German point of view, I put my next video right here in the end screen, right next to the button where you can subscribe to my channel, by the way. In either way, I hope you click and enjoy. I'll see you in my next video. Viel Spaß!